This will be our 1.
I sound like a 3-year-old, but I prefer, I love Play-Doh. It's like the soft, consistency of it. It's like you can flatten it out and oh God. It's I love the feeling of it. It's more of a texture thing for me.
Friday, so why don't we switch out QOD journals? If you were not here, keep them on your desk because you're going to have to answer this by the end of class. If you already
Ever since I was in elementary school, teachers always put it into my head that you're just bad at math. You're bad at math. Your handwriting sucks. Your school career is going down the drain. And so ever since a young age, I just hated school because it was always negative for me. It was never, I could never had a positive experience in a school.
That's probably better. Sorry, I'm gonna switch it up. That wasn't a good one.
Oh my goodness.
What part?
In Lakeside School's early years, the majority of the students, really all of the students that Lakeside School had the privilege of serving were adjudicated youth. They were either adjudicated delinquent or dependent. In the mid-'80s, several area school districts here in Montgomery County approached Lakeside and said, look, we really like what you do as an alternative school. We have students that would benefit from your program that aren't necessarily adjudicated, but they are disruptive in the public school. Through the late 80s and early 90s, all of the districts in Montgomery County began to utilize alternative schools or day treatment centers instead of going through the court system. Our students are at risk of not graduating from high school successfully, and our goal in working with each of those students is to prepare them for life after high school.
I didn't think I was gonna drop out. I thought I was gonna be end up getting kicked out. I don't think I would have graduated because I used to get in so many fights. I used to get in trouble all the time for stupid things.
Good morning, Paige. Hey, student government today. Student government this morning. Good morning.
Oh, it's
Student government.
Oh, it's student government today? Okay.
The truth is, I don't think that I've ever actually come across a student that enjoys failure. I don't think I've ever come across a student who says, I want to wake up and disappoint my teachers today. I want to wake up and get kicked out of class today. I don't think that's any of our students' goals. Life experiences impact our students' brains, and that's going to impact their behaviors in the classroom and how well they can do in the classroom. And so it's very hard for me to teach a student Shakespeare, for instance, if they're coming into my classroom wondering where their next meal is coming from. If they're coming into my classroom wondering if the person that recently got locked up is going to be let out soon. If they're wondering why the person that they were texting didn't respond to them. Those are all extremely real life and important things to these students. But if they come in and they're consumed with something like that, for me to ask them to open up Hamlet and begin to read is going to be a very difficult stretch for me to make with them. But at Lakeside, we're really trying to redefine what it means to be trauma-informed, and we're really trying to work with our students' whole brain, really work from the bottom of the brain up. What I found is that a lot of trauma-informed programs, they focus heavily on relationships, and relationships are extremely important. But one of the things that we've begun to discover is that relationships aren't always enough. For a lot of our students who have experienced early childhood adversity, lower regions of their brain than their limbic system, which controls their relationships, are impacted. And so they spend a lot of time down there. And so if you go to a student who's operating out of their brainstem or their midbrain and try to just relate with them at that moment in time, it's not going to be effective. You're not going to reach that student, and chances are you're actually going to trigger that student more. So finding interventions that reach those lower regions of the brain are really the most essential ideas for how you're going to help students like that. And the truth is, from the research that I've done, there's very few people out there, there's little pockets across the country that are really working at that bottom-up mentality.
So I think Lakeside always had a focus in terms of knowing that the students that we were working with had experienced trouble and experienced trauma. So we developed systems that worked for students that had experienced trauma in their lives in terms of really solid relationships, putting our focus on relationships, putting our focus on non-punitive ways of dealing with them, really looking at their needs. everything that we were doing, which is true for most schools, was focused on the limbic system or the cortex. The limbic system is about relationships and safety and emotions. The cortex is all about reasoning and getting information into the brain. That has to do with the top 2 levels of the brain. In the last, I'd say, 5-6 years, we studied under Bruce Perry and the Child Trauma Academy in terms of the neurosequential model of both therapeutics and education. And with this training, what we realized is there was lower parts of the brain that we were missing. So in early childhood, the brain starts developing at the bottom, and it develops over the years up through the cortex. But a lot of times the damage from early adverse experiences or neglect, when things go wrong early in life, it impacts the part of the brain that's developing at that time. So it would be impacting the lower 2 levels of the brain.
Go to the other side.
Like for the brain stem, it has a lot to do with breathing and heart rate and pulse and temperature. So some interventions for the brain stem are some pretty simple things that you would do for a newborn baby. Like newborn babies only have a brain stem. So the things that calm babies down are a lot of the same things that calm the brain stem down. And that would be things like rocking. So we've put rocking chairs in classes, or swinging. We put swings outside. Cuddling, that's why we have service dogs we found can really meet every level of the brain's needs, but one of the things for the lower level is just being able to cuddle up with a service dog and feel the heartbeat and the warmth and petting them, feeling that affection. Breathing exercises are huge. We use pulse oximeters where students can check their pulse and see what's going on in the brainstem and then try different interventions. Teachers can do them with the whole class. We teach different brain breaks that teachers can do in class that can calm the brainstem or any other level of the brain. So those are some of the things for the brainstem. The next level of the brain would be the midbrain, and that has a lot to do with movement, fine motor movement and large muscle movement. So isometrics, moving furniture around the room, exercises, running, jumping, and building things with their hands, using fidgets, putting things together, doodling. Some of those things really work well with the midbrain.